Hello, everyone. I'm Kevin Bradley, and welcome to another Facebook Live event. Tonight, we're going to actually discuss our Awake curriculum, Module 2. And I think if you remember, or you did see, we did a couple of months ago go through the Module 1. And basically, just to recap on that, that's what we did when we had first people being diagnosed with sleep apnea. And by now, you should hopefully be used to all the terminology, like what AHI means, what CPAP is, and moving you through your journey to a good therapy. Okay, and I will have the next slide, please. So I think we did talk about this, and I just mentioned it. AHI is hypopnea index. And basically, it's a number that you'll be given. A lot of people are unsure about what this means, but the AHI is a sum of the number of apneas, or the pauses and breaths that are occurring each hour. The hypopneas are actually when you're asleep and you're not getting that good deep breathing, and that index is looked at. If it was less than 5, for example, an hour, that would be normal to no sleep apnea. 5 to 15 can be regarded as mild sleep apnea, whereas 15 to 30 events would be moderate sleep apnea, and of course over 30 would be severe. Now, I think when I actually started in my study, I was diagnosed with mild sleep apnea, and I did, most recently when I went to my DME and they read my card, I was really delighted with my good CPAP therapy, that my AHI is actually down to 0.7. So any questions about AHI and what it means?
Yes, I have a question.
Okay.
My doctor told me that my AHI is 20. So I stop breathing 20 times at night while I'm sleeping?
Well, actually, I think that's a great point, because people do get a little bit confused, and as horrifying it is to find out, that 20 is actually every hour. Okay, so if you consider that you were sleeping 8 hours a night or 7 hours a night, 7 times 20 is you're stopping breathing approximately 140 times per night. Okay. I also wanted to add on this, and we should give credit, that this AHI was developed by Dr. Christian Gimeno, who unfortunately recently passed away. And, we talked about this before. This is the reason why we're all here, and how therapy can be titrated to each individual case. And he was very innovative. This was actually developed by him in the 1970s. Now, if you want to find out more information about Dr. Gimeno's work, we do have a tribute page on our website, so please check that out. Okay, next slide. So, all right, some of the nighttime apnea symptoms that people experience, and I'm sure we've all been there. This is what led us to maybe go and seek help. I think it's also important when you're talking to other people that you know, friends, family, co-workers, when someone displays symptoms like this, it should key us into thinking, maybe you should go and have a sleep study. So some of the things we're looking at is snoring is the key one, but dry or sore mouth or throat, waking up, gasping for breath is horrific, and it certainly happened to me prior to my diagnosis. And I actually, misdiagnosed myself as having maybe a panic attack at night, or did I have a bad dream? And then the more these events occurred, I felt like, okay, there was a couple of times I actually jumped out of bed, and I realized that it was my way of starting to breathe again. So, that's a key indicator for OSA. Frequent trips to the bathroom. We did have a lady talk to us before about nocturia, and that can certainly occur. Unfortunately as well, some people experience bedwetting at night. But I think, a lot of people just complain of, even though I sleep 8 hours or I'm going to bed early, I'm just waking up tired all the time and I'm just not refreshed. That feeling where you're just foggy and you're headachy, is a real indicator as well that you need help and need to go and get a sleep study. Any questions regarding this slide or these symptoms or things that people are experiencing?
No, not at this time.
Okay. Now, sometimes just before we go on, sorry, I find and I was encouraged that sometimes I do, even after work or I've had a busy day, I will take a nap. And I feel it's important that I use my machine even if I'm closing my eyes for 20 minutes. It actually helps. So moving on, some of the symptoms that can happen as well when you've had that feeling of not getting those good sleep that we all really need and deserve to recharge. The daytime sleep apnea symptoms can occur, and these happen where people like just aren't as sharp. They have poor concentration. They may be seen by colleagues in work as being lazy or just not on the ball. They could be grouchy with their loved ones or even colleagues at work. But I feel, we've just even recently seen an incident, which is, the really severe one, where someone actually, unfortunately, succumbed to symptoms after surgery when this lady actually fell asleep at the wheel. And we do hear this. So if that's ever happened to anyone, that's a real key indicator that you need help, and it could be undiagnosed sleep apnea. Of course, again, where that fogginess leads to, poor performance at work or poor academic abilities, which just makes us all feel like we're not achieving what we should be and we're not working at our best potential. So any questions on that?
Not a question, but something just to add. I'd just like to say that personally, my AHI was in the severe category that you described before. And
Sure.
these symptoms that you're talking about of, being grouchy and having a short temper were something that were very big in my family dynamic. I had a young child at the time, a toddler, which, can make anybody irritable as a parent, but, with having the unrestorative sleep and severe sleep apnea, it was just making that situation worse. I think sometimes, people just think it's life and how it is, and not it's just the way that it is, the way that the world is today, living in it, lots of busy things. But I can attest that since my treatment, that is definitely, I've seen a marked difference in
Right.
in that type of feeling.
Great. And of course, when you think about it, these decreased events lead to decreased oxygen, obviously, and we need that oxygen at night. We need that vital circulation to maintain organ function. And that's your brain, your kidneys, your liver, your lungs, your heart. And of course, if you don't get that vital oxygen and circulation to these vital organs, they're not going to function to their best potential. So, again, our bodies need that to repair at night. And that leads to someone waking up a lot more refreshed, rested, and energetic. So good. We'll have the next slide, please. So when we look at how sleep is built, you think of your sleep as being built with various types of bricks. Your nightly sleep architecture relies on that foundation like we talked about, and that's leading into a light sleep, deep sleep, and then the REM, and then becoming awake with a more refreshed sense of well-being. Now, we do want to keep the light sleep at a low time, and we want to move into that deep sleep and have a high amount of time where the deep sleep happens, moving into that really essential REM sleep and having fewer awakenings. This is all going to lead to a more rested person when they wake up the next day. So any questions on how the sleep is built?
So it sounds like you have a cycle of sleep through the light, deep REM. How many of those should you have when you sleep? at night?
Yeah, great question. And it depends on your age. If you think about, we look at some kids or some babies that are sleeping and they're just almost like a ton of bricks. You try and rouse them and they're just like so sloppy and floppy that they're in that really deep sleep. And that can change with age. I think some of that as babies are in that they get a lot of sleep. As adults, we carry a lot on board. Our mind's buzzing with our work events, with things that are happening at home. You're trying to really be in that light sleep, but get into the deep sleep, but your mind's working overtime. So definitely the cycles can vary, but we're looking to eventually get to that deep sleep where we are like a kid, where we're just so quote unquote dead to the world that we're just in a real comfortable REM sleep that helps us repair our bodies. Okay. And then when we look at this further, again, like I said, the light sleep is how we move from being awake into deep sleep. You're getting yourself into bed, you're making yourself comfortable. Hopefully you do, create a good sleep environment, because all these, like we've talked about in the past in some of these sessions, are key. So, keep your room at a good cooler temperature, which most people prefer. Have blackout shades if that's what's needed, because you want less light sleep and moving into that deep sleep where the body recharges and heals. The REM sleep is where, you get into the dream cycles. The deep sleep is more for the body, and the REM sleep would be more for the brain. So that's the time where you're filing memories, you're learning stuff, you're cleaning up your house, basically. And again, that's essential for a better well-being when you wake up the next day. Any question about that? No? Okay, we can go to the next slide, please. So this is what we want to avoid. I mean, awakenings, we've all been there. A lot of us have experienced it. Unfortunately, some people just suffer with insomnia. When you do have a lot of awakenings, sometimes it's just harder and harder to get back to sleep. I'm sure, like me or many other people, we've all experienced where you wake up and you just toss and turn. And I try and not even clock watch, because then I just get more irritable and I'm like, oh my, I have to get up in like 4 hours. And, now it's 3 o'clock and now it's 20 past 3 and I keep waking up. So those constant sleep arousals will just lead to, people getting into lighter stages of sleep that again will destabilize that foundation that leads to better sleep architecture. So unfortunately, all these happenings and events each night will just lead to that house falling down. So any questions about that?
Yeah, I have a question, please. How can I avoid some of these awakenings?
Sure. Well, maybe by now you are on CPAP therapy. And of course, we advocate that you wear your mask. So you keep that mask on as soon as you go to sleep, ease into a light sleep, going and moving through the cycles into deeper and eventually REM sleep, and keep that mask on all night. So, some people also feel that it could be a pressure issue. Their pressure may not be adequate for them. Some people complain that it could be too high or too low. And that fixed pressure is titrated usually during the CPAP trial or after the initial sleep study. Again, it's a good idea for some of the newer machines now to keep an eye on your AHI or your apnea hypopnea sleep index each night so that you can see that you're progressing. And a colleague of mine who recently started CPAP therapy has, she's happy every morning that she looks and her events are decreased. Now, for the titration, sometimes there's no great magic formula. And for example, somebody with an AHI of 65 may drop to 5, for example, with a pressure of 8, while someone with an AHI of 25 may need a pressure of 10 to just get them to 13. So it's important to keep an eye on that And if warranted, talk to your doctor, and maybe a repeat sleep study and titration of that therapy is needed. Okay, so I hope I explained that, unless there's any other questions with that slide. We can go to the next one. So again, we can look at the both types of, there's obstructive sleep apnea versus central sleep apnea. So again, I think we've covered this before, but just to recap, obstructive sleep apnea is more of a mechanical issue. It can be more, your airway. If somebody has a deviated septum, for example, that can also affect how you're diagnosed, whether it's sleep apnea obstructive or central. Now, some of the factors as well that can look into that are, you may collapse your airway during sleep. Your tongue may fall back, requiring a different pressure, for example. And, again, it could be a mechanical problem with the OSA, or obstructive sleep apnea. Now, the majority of central sleep apnea patients may also experience obstructive airway sleep apnea. But when you have a central sleep apnea diagnosis, that's more when the brain is not actually speaking to the muscles in your body and your lungs and your chest to say breathe. So people experience that, and some people can gravitate between both. Again, that's why it's important for our machines to read adequately what's happening during the night. And if this is happening to you, where you feel like, your AHIs are low, but maybe you wake up and you feel like you've stopped breathing. And I've had some people tell me that it actually hurts. They wake up with pain in their chest. That could be another time as well, or a good indication to go and see your doctor, and they could perform another sleep study. So it's important to sort of look at both and how both are treated. Obstructive sleep apnea is usually treated with the CPAP therapy, continuous positive airway pressure, whereas the central sleep apnea generally requires the BiPAP. So I know that's a bit different and people have different diagnoses, but any questions on that?
I don't have a question, but I'd like to share a little bit of a story, as we often talk about, patients sharing to other patients helps our whole community here that we have at the ASAA. As I said before, my sleep apnea was diagnosed as severe, and after some use of my CPAP machine with my obstructive sleep apnea, the central sleep apnea presented itself. So I had a little bit of a combination of both. One of the things that my doctor spoke to me about was, since I probably had sleep apnea since I was a young person, maybe even into my teenage years or a little bit before that, or had some sleep breathing issues as a child, that, my brain architecture had changed a little bit since I had gone so long without getting kind of those cycles of sleep that you were talking about before. As you were saying about laying this good foundation, me as a young person wasn't getting good sleep. So that foundation of my brain recharging and doing what it needed to do at night, and my overall body and organs, weren't quite doing everything that it was supposed to be doing, like you just talked about a little bit earlier. And so I started to develop a little bit of that central sleep apnea. I eventually did have to switch to a BiPAP machine from my CPAP for not only the central sleep apnea, but also my pressure was so high, I was having problems with the exhalation. The pressure was just too much for me to breathe against and exhale. I was having a lot of CO2 that I was holding on to. So I just wanted to share that story because I know that we often have a lot of people that ask us online about central sleep apnea. And, it is something that I am still working with. My machine does tell me sometimes that I have these central sleep apneas, but for as sophisticated and great as our CPAP machines are and the data that they give us, sometimes there's also a possibility that some of those central sleep apneas are kind of just me moving into different stages of sleep and the cycle, and it's just the machine is registering it as a different way. We all know those things aren't perfect, but we're definitely happy that we have the CPAP machines for sure. But yeah.
No, and I think that's a great point and a great experience to share. And, again, I think when someone has shared that experience to me, even though their AHIs were decreased and they felt, better, there was times where they would wake up and really feel like they really had to push themselves to breathe. And again, that's that maybe gravitation between, the obstructive sleep apnea and having the therapy in place, but with a central sleep apnea component that's taken place. So it would be the hope that maybe our machines, an advancement could actually pick that up as well. It'd be great if we, in the morning, we see ECG strips and we all like nice waveforms, that maybe in the morning we could print out a strip and say, during this time, this is where your brain actually had stopped telling you to breathe, Now, some people do get very concerned as well when they've been on therapy for a while. And, a lot of factors can contribute to an adjustment in therapy, either way or the other. And, think about it like your eyeglasses prescription, where it'll change. And mine certainly has over the years. And, other factors can contribute. If you put on weight or lose weight, that may mean an adjustment in your settings. And be aware as well that, if you're having a few glasses of wine or drinks before you go to bed, that may influence your body, because all these things like sleeping pills, maybe laying on your back, will have an influence in how you breathe and how your body's responding to that therapy. So again, sometimes people do get concerned, and maybe it's just a question of doing less weight loss or trying to lose weight, not having those drinks before going to bed, or being careful with sleeping aids, because again, all these things can contribute to it. And I know a lot of people that get great benefit out of those pillows. I have never tried it, but I do find now that since I've started CPAP therapy, I don't lay on my back anymore. So I do get comfortable sleeping side to side, but that can also help people greatly. Okay.
I did forget to mention one point also when I was talking about my experience with dealing with obstructive and the centrals kind of combined, since I had the condition for quite a long time, was that my doctor also worked with me about getting on. I actually started to take a prescription, an antidepressant, to help with my brain architecture. And so as you were talking about, the laying this foundation of sleep and so forth, that particular prescription, kind of helped the chemicals, obviously, in my brain kind of reorganize a little bit, which then in turn helped with the central sleep apnea. That's just my personal experience and what I was working with my physician, but maybe that's helpful for someone else to bring up with their doctor about looking at other options.
Great advice. And again, that's what we would regard as adjunct therapy. And if that helps, the situation and it's working, that's a wonderful piece of information to share. Great. We can go to the next slide. So here's where I always say this session is pre-recorded, and when we push it to the broadcast, I encourage, we're all very much sharing our experiences. I feel that when we have peer-to-peer sharing of experiences, we learn so much. Some of us are doing really well with our therapy. We're wearing our masks for every hour we sleep. Others are struggling. There's new patients. There's patients that have been doing this for years. Again, there's titrations. There's repeat sleep studies. So we really encourage you when this broadcast goes onto our Facebook page to please share your experiences and ask questions. There will be a few of us when we do broadcast this event available on the wings to also answer questions. And sometimes that helps us generate some great discussion that can be of great benefit for people all in different stages. Okay, so we look forward to your questions. We also love hearing comments and feedback. And again, these modules are designed to help people out in the community maybe think that these are tools that we can use to maybe start up an awake group. There's a few modules we can go through the next couple over the next few months and hopefully take your shared experiences and people like you and host a group where it's a formal piece of education and where people meet periodically to come together and feel like they're not alone. So these are tools for you for out in the community. And again, if you're thinking of doing anything like that, we're always here for a resource. Okay, so thank you very much. And before I leave it, I know there's always a great opportunity during these events to say, you know, what's happening next. There's certainly a lot of great activity going on in our community and great activity going on in our Awake and our Awake Facebook page. But I was going to call on Justine to just maybe sort of give us a little overview of what we should expect over the next couple of months with Sleeptember coming up. And of course, before that, our summit. So I'll hand it over to you, Justine.
Great. Thanks, Kevin. Yes, I just want to remind everybody that September is the month of Sleeptember here at the American Sleep Apnea Association. It is our annual awareness campaign that we've had for several years now. And the highlight of this year's Sleeptember will be the Awake Together Summit that we have taking place in San Francisco, California at the Presidio National Park there. It's going to be on September 19th, and it's an all-day event where patients, caregivers, industry, physicians, where everyone is getting together to talk about and raise awareness for our community and provide our patients with education and information. You may remember in June 2018, we had a meeting at the FDA to paint the patient journey to help the FDA understand what it was like living with sleep apnea. We had that last year in 2018, and we're building off of that and having another similar meeting this year on September 19th. So please visit our website, sleepapnea.org. There is a summit page that's there that tells you all about the meeting and how to register. The meeting is not only taking place in person, but is also being shown via webcast. It is always free for patients and caregivers, and would love for you to join us either in person or via webcast. And we're also going to be pushing out a survey within the next couple of weeks, talking a little bit, gathering some more data and talking a little bit more about the patient experience and journey of living with sleep apnea. We had one last year with the FDA meeting that we hosted. And so we're building off of that data and information, and we have another one that'll be out shortly that will be on the website as well. So I hope that you can join us by voicing your opinion on the survey and telling us a little bit about your specific journey. And then again, join us in, hopefully it'll be sunny San Francisco or via the webcast on September 19th.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I mean, Justine, it's so gratifying and rewarding to see all these events occurring and feeling like our community is growing so much. And, you know, we're here to advocate for patients and advocate for this diagnosis that we all have had and look at ways where people can get through that therapy and share experiences. So it's so exciting to see that these events are coming up. Great. Okay, well, thank you all for joining us. And again, we look forward to hearing your questions, comments, and we'll be here for you. And we wish you all a great night's sleep. Thank you.